Hi guys, and welcome to another video. And today I'm going to be doing a story reading ASMR video. And the story is going to be called The Golden Branch. And I got the inspiration to do this video because I have a Go Calm app which has like little mini stories that helps you fall asleep. And one of them was a tarot card, sort of High Priestess and the Magician story. And I tried to find it, but it's not an actual book. It's just on the actual app. But it genuinely made me like fall asleep, and it was a nice calming story. Um, I'm sorry about my hair, guys. I meant to brush it before I actually started filming, but it should be fine. It should straighten out eventually. I'm so sorry for not doing any videos recently, but at the moment I'm having trouble with technology. I had to factory reset this phone today because my other phone is going out of sync again, so I can't use it. So I have to use this one, which I apologise for not putting any videos up. But I might invest in getting a camera, a proper one, because I just can't get any luck with technology, and I can't film on any of my phones to do videos. So hopefully you understand. And also I've had noise and I've not been able to film, which can't be helped. But I'm going to be reading this story today. It's supposed to make you relax. This is going to be soft spoken because I can't whisper, as you know. This story is called The Golden Branch as well. So please like this video, please hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to click on the notification bell so you're updated about any future videos. I really hope that this relaxes you. This is a vintage fairy tale as well, and it says that it may contain violence, and it's obviously saying encourage parents to read beforehand if your child is sensitive to such themes. So it's kind of like a chilled child book, but it's for everyone really, pretty much. So let us start, sorry. Once upon a time there was a king who was so morose and agreeable that he was feared by all his subjects, and with good reason, as for the most trifling offences he would have them punished. The King Grumpy, as he was called, had one son, who was as different from his father as he could possibly be. No prince equalled him in cleverness and kindness of heart, but unfortunately he was most terribly ugly. He had crooked legs and squinting eyes, a large mouth all on one side, and a hunchback. Never was there a beautiful soul in such a frightful little body. But in spite of his appearance, everybody loved him. The queen, his mother, called him Suku because it was a name she rather liked, and it seemed to suit him. King Gripe, who cared a great deal more for his own grandeur than of his son's happiness, wished to betroth the prince to the daughter of a neighbouring king, whose great estates joined his own, for he thought that the alliance would make him more powerful than ever. And as for the princess, she would do very well for Prince Kirkcure, for she was as ugly as himself. Indeed, though, she was the most admirable creature in the world. There was no concealing the fact that she was frightful and so lame that she always went about with a crutch, and people called her Princess Cabbage Stalk. The king, having asked for and received a portrait of this princess, had it placed in the great hall under a canopy, and sent for Prince Kirkle, to whom he said that, as this was the portrait of his future bride, he hoped the prince found it charming. The prince, after one glance at it, turned away with a disgraceful air, which greatly offended his father. I am to understand that you are not pleased, he said very sharply. No, sire, replied the prince. How could I be pleased to marry an ugly lame princess? Certainly, it is becoming in you to object to that, said King Grumpy, since you are ugly enough to frighten anyone yourself. This is the very reason, said the prince, that I wish to marry someone who is not ugly. I am quite tired enough of seeing myself. I tell you that you shall marry her, cried King Grumpy angrily, and the prince, seeing that it was of no use to demonstrate, bowed and retired. As King Grumpy was not used to being contradicted in anything, he was very much displeased with his son, and ordered that he should be imprisoned in the tower that was kept on purpose for rebellious princes, but had not been used for about 200 years. Because there had not been any, the prince thought all the rooms looked strangely old-fashioned with their antique furniture. But as there was a good library, he was pleased, for he was very fond of reading, and he soon got permission to have as many books as he liked. But he had looked at them, he found that they had written in a forgotten language, and he could not understand a single word, though he amused himself trying. King Grumpy was so conceived that Prince Kerskull, I can't say that name, was it Curlisque, would not get tired of being in prison, and so content to marry the Princess Cabbage Stalk, that he sent ambassadors to her father proposing that she should come and be married to this son, who would make her perfectly happy. The king was delighted to receive so good an offer for his unlucky daughter, though, to tell the truth, he found it impossible to admire the prince's portrait, which had been sent to him. However, he had it placed in a favourable light as possible, and sent for the princess. But the moment she caught sight of him, she looked the other way and began to cry. The king, who was very much annoyed to see how greatly she disliked him, took a mirror and, holding it up before the unhappy princess, said, I see you do not think the prince handsome, but look at yourself and see if you have any right to complain about that. Sire, she answered, I do not wish to complain, only I beg of you, do not make me marry at all. I'd rather be the unhappy Princess Cabbage-Stalk all my life than inflict the sight of my ugliness on anyone else. But the king would not listen to her, and sent her with the ambassadors. In the meantime, the prince was kept safely locked up in his tower, and that he might be as dull as possible, King Grumpy ordered that no one should speak to him, and that they should give him next to nothing to eat. But all the prince's guards were so fond of him that they did everything they dared, in spite of the king, to make the time pass pleasantly. One day, as the prince was walking up and down the great gallery, thinking how miserable it was to be ugly and to be forced to marry an equally frightful princess, he looked up suddenly and noticed that the painted windows were particularly bright and beautiful, and for the sake of doing something that would change his sad thoughts, he began to examine him attentively. He found that the pictures seemed to be scenes from the life of a man who appeared in every window, and the prince, fancying that he saw it in the man some resemblance to himself, began to be deeply interested. In the first window there was a picture of him in one of the turrets of the tower, farther worn. He was seeking something in a clink in the wall. In the next picture he was opening an old cabinet with a golden key. And so it went on through numbers of scenes, and presently the prince noticed that another figure occupied the most important place in each scene, and this time it was a tall, handsome young man. Poor Prince Kerskew found it a pleasure to look at him. He was so straight and strong, by the time he had grown dark, and the prince had to go back into his own room, and to amuse himself he took up a quaint old book and began to look at the pictures, but his surprise was great to find that they represented the same scenes as the windows of the gallery, and what was more, they seemed to be alive in looking at the pictures of musicians. He saw that their hands move and heard sweet sounds. There was a picture of the ball, and the prince could watch little dancing people come and go. He turned a page, and there was an excellent smell of savoury dinner, and one of the figures who sat at the feast looked at him and said, We drink your health, Kirkule. Try to give us our queen again. If you do, You will be rewarded, if not, it will be the worse for you. These words the prince, who had been growing more and more astonished, was fairly terrified, and dropping the book with a crash, he sank back insensible. The noise he had made brought his guards to his aid, and as soon as he revived, they asked him what was the matter. He answered that he was so faint and giddy with hunger that he had imagined he saw and heard all sorts of strange things. Thereupon, in spite of the king's orders, the guards gave him an excellent supper, and he had eaten it. And when he had eaten it, he again opened his book, but could see none of the wonderful pictures, which convinced him that he must have been dreaming before. However, when he went to the gallery the next day and looked at the painted windows again, he found they had moved, and the figures came and went as if had been alive. And after watching the one who was like himself, found the key in the crack of the turning wall and opened the old cabinet. He determined to go and examine the place himself and try to find out what the mystery was. So he went up into the turret and began to search about and tap upon the walls, and all at once he came upon a place that sounded hollow. Taking a hammer, he broke away a bit of the stone, and he found behind it a little golden key. The next thing to do was to find the cabinet, and the prince soon came to it, hidden away in a dark corner, though indeed it was so old and battered looking that he would never have noticed it of his own accord. At first he could not see any keyhole, but after a careful search he found one hidden in the carving, and the golden key just fitted it. So the prince gave it a vigorous turn, and the doors flew open. Ugly and old as the cabinet was outside, nothing could have been more rich and beautiful than what met the prince's astonished eyes. Every jar was made of crystal, of amber, or of some precious stone, and was quite full of every kind of treasure. Prince Kirku was delighted. He opened one after the other, until at last he came to one tiny drawer, which contained only an emerald key. I believe that this must open the little golden door in the middle, said the prince to himself, and he fitted it in the little key and turned it. The tiny door swung back, and a soft crimson light gleamed over the whole cabinet. The prince found that it proceeded from an immense glowing carbuncle made into a box which lay before him. He lost no time in opening it, but what was his horror when he found that it contained a man's hand, which was holding a portrait. His first thought was to put back the terrible box and fly from the turnip, but a voice in his ear said the hand belonged to one whom you can help and restore. Look at this beautiful portrait, the original of which was the cause of all my misfortunes, and if you wish to help me, go without a moment's delay to the great gallery and notice when the sun rays fall most brightly, and if you seek there, you will find my treasure. The voice ceased, and then the prince and the bewilderment asked various questions. He received to answer, so he put back the box and locked the cabinet up again, and having placed the key in the crack in the wall, harnessed down to the gallery. When he re-entered it, all the windows shook and clattered in the strangest way, but the prince did not heed them. He was looking so carefully for the place where the sun shone most brightly, and it seemed to him that it was upon the portrait of a most splendidly handsome young man. He went up and examined it, and found that it rested against the ebony and gold panelling, just like any of the other pictures in the gallery. He was puzzled, but knowing what to do next, until it occurred to him to see it if the windows could help him. And looking at the nearest, he saw a picture of himself lifting the picture from the wall. The prince took the hint, and lifting aside the picture without difficulty, found himself in a marble half adorned with statues. From that he passed on through numbers of splendid rooms, until at last he reached one, all hung with blue gauze. The walls were of turquoises, and upon a low couch lay a lovely lady who seemed to be asleep. Her hair, black as ebony, was spread across the pillows, making her face look ivory white, and the prince noticed that she was unquiet, and when he softly advanced, staring to wake her, he could hear her sigh and murmur to herself, "Ah, how dared you think to win my love by separating me from my beloved Fairmont, and in my presence cutting off that dear hand that even you should have feared and honoured?" And then the tears rolled down the lovely lady's cheeks, and Prince Kirkule began to comprehend that she was under an enchantment, and that it was the hand of her lover that he had found. At this moment, a huge eagle flew into the room, holding in its talons a glowing branch upon which was growing what looked like clusters of cherries. Only every cherry was a single glowing ruby. This he presented to the prince, who guessed by this time that he was in some way to break the enchantment that surrounded the sleeping lady. Taking the branch, he touched her lightly with it, saying, "Fair one, I know not by what enchantment thou art unbound, but in the name of thy beloved Fairmont, I conjure thee to come back to life, which thou hast lost, but not forgotten." Instantly the lady opened her lustrous eyes and saw the eagle hovering near. "Ah, stay, dear love, stay," she cried, but the eagle, uttering a dolorous cry, fluttered his broad wings and disappeared, and the lady turned to the Prince Kirkle and said, "I know that it is to you I owe my deliverance from an enchantment which has held me for 200 years. If there is anything that I can do for you in return, you have only to tell me, and all my fairy power shall be used to make you happy." "Madam," said Prince Kirkle, "I wish to be allowed to restore your beloved Fairmont to his natural form, since I cannot forget the tears you shed for him." "That is very admirable of you, dear Prince," said the fairy, "but it is reserved for another person to do that. I cannot explain more at present, but there is nothing you wish for yourself." "Madam," cried the prince, flinging himself down at her feet, "only look at my ugliness. I am called Kirkle, and I am an object of derision. I entreat you to make me less ridiculous." "Rise, prince," said the fairy, touching him with a golden branch, "but be as accomplished as you are handsome, and take the name of Prince Peerless, since that is the only title which will suit you now." Silent from joy, the prince kissed her hand to express his thanks, and when he rose and saw his new reflection in the mirrors which surrounded him, he understood that Kirkule was indeed gone for ever. "How I wish," said the fairy, "that I dared to tell you that what is in store for you, and warn you of the traps which lie in your path. But you must not fly from the tower, prince, and remember that the fairy Duchlin will be your friend always." When she had finished speaking, the prince, to his great astonishment, found himself no longer in the tower, but set down in a thick forest at least 100 leagues away from it, and there we must leave him for the present and see what was happening elsewhere. When the guards found that the prince did not ask for his supper as usual, they went into his room, and not finding him there, were very much alarmed and searched the tower from turret to dungeon, but without success, knowing that the king would certainly have them punished for allowing the prince to escape. They then agreed to say that he was ill, and after making the smallest among them look as much like Prince Kirkle as possible, they put him into his bed and sent to inform the king. King Grumpy was quite delighted to hear that his son was ill, for he thought that he would all the sooner be brought to do as he wished and marry the princess. So he sent back to the guards to say that the prince was to be treated as severely as before, which was just what they had hoped he would say. In the meantime, Princess Cabbage-Stalk had reached the palace, travelling in a litter. King Grumpy went out to meet her, but when he saw her with a skin like tortoise, her thick eyebrows meeting above her large nose, and her mouth from ear to ear, he could not help crying out, "Well, I must say Kirkule is ugly enough, but I don't think you need have thought twice before consenting to marry him." "Sire," she replied, "I know too well what I am like to be hurt by what you say, but I assure you that I have no wish to marry your son. I'd rather be called Princess Cabbage-Stalk and the Queen Kirkle." That this made King Grumpy very angry. "Your father has sent you here to marry my son," he said, "and you may be sure that I am not going to offend him by altering his arrangements." So the poor princess was sent away in disgrace to her own apartment, and the ladies who entered upon her were charged to bring her in a better mind. At this juncture, the guards were in great fear that would be found out, sent to tell the king that his son was dead, which annoyed him very much. He at once made up his mind that he entirely the princess thought, and gave orders that she should be imprisoned in the tower in Prince Kirkle's place. The Princess Carishtag was immensely astonished at the unjust proceeding, and sent many messages of remonstrance to King Grumpy. But he was in such a temper that no one dared to deliver him, or to send me letters, which the princess wrote to her father. However, as she did not know this, she lived in hope of soon going back to her own country, and tried to amuse herself as well as she could until the time should come. I'm gonna try and skip to the end of the story, guys, because I don't want it to be too long, this video. Probably already is by now. See if I can get to the end of this story. Just because I want to know what happens is all. I would read it all, but it's quite a long story. So let's go to the end, and it has gone on for ages. So here we go. It says, "The prince and the princess thanked her for all their hearts and declared that to her they owed all the happiness. And the two princesses, who had so lately been mice, came and begged that the fairy would use her power to release their unhappy friends who were still under the enchanted spell. Really, said the fairy Dutchline, on this happy occasion I cannot find it in my heart to refuse you anything." And she gave 3 strokes of her wand upon the golden branch, and immediately all the prisoners in the enchanter's castle found themselves free, and came with all speed to the wonderful garden. But one touch of the golden branch restored each one to his natural form, and they greeted one another with many rejoicings. To complete her generous work, the fairy presented them with the wonderful cabinet and all the treasures it contained, which were worth at least 10 kingdoms. But to Prince Peerless and Princess Sunbeam she gave the palace and garden of the golden branch, were immensely rich and greatly beloved by all the subjects. They lived happily ever after. So there you go, there's the end of the Golden Branch story. I'm sorry I couldn't read it all, but I just don't want the video being very long, because it already is. But as you can see from the story, it's about a guy who becomes ugly and then becomes beautiful in it all, because he helps a fairy. And that's all it's about. It's about a golden branch and to do with a fairy. And I found it on Google, actually, because I was looking for fairy stories, because I couldn't find like a tarot card story that I wanted to read, which would have been better. Because I don't think it's a story on the app. It's a made up one. So yeah, but I hope you enjoyed the video nonetheless. I should be doing a video again tomorrow, so stay tuned for that, guys. And I hope you all have a happy, what day is it today? I'm sorry. Happy Thursday, and it's the start of September as well. So I hope you all have a happy Thursday, and I will see you all, guys, in the next video. Bye, guys.